certain movies that are synonymous with the word flop or bomb. We consider these movies failures, but there's actually quite a few alleged flops that made over $250 million, and by all stretches of the imagination weren't failures. They at least made their money back. And some of us have gotten in trouble in the past for calling movies flops when they made a ton of money. Tim.
I wasn't even on frame, and I'm on blast.
Yeah.
You're on blast now.
Tim. Maybe it was a bad movie, but it didn't fail, at least financially. One example is The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and that was the recent one with Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, that one ended up making like its money back. I didn't see the Amazing Spider-Man 2, so I didn't contribute
because
to
you
that.
heard it was bad.
I think that is reflective of Spider-Man fatigue. There's so, like, that was one recently where it's like, we're already rebooting this. And I think that has to do a lot with rights retention and how you have to make a certain number of movies or else it reverts back to Marvel, which now seems...
Want it desperately.
Right, which makes it Disneyland, because there's a lot of Avengers. Spider-Man was an Avenger, so...
Well, it made a $700 million return and counting on a $200 to $250 million investment. So that's not really a flop, is it?
How pissed are you if you're like Andrew Garfield and everyone's saying it's a flop and you're like, we just tripled our... Shut up. You know?
We also have Planet of the Apes, not the recent one, the Tim Burton one. It grossed $362 million, so it's not really a flop either. It's more of like maybe a bad movie. Why do they keep getting called flops? Is it because the returns come so much later, like in international?
Some movies get branded as flops on their opening weekend.
Yes.
And that can because of word of mouth or because of critical reviews or whatnot. And then the movie's out for a profitable stretch of the summer, or it does really well internationally, and it ends up doing well on the whole, but the damage is already done.
A lot of movies are branded flops before they come out. That's the thing, is a lot of movies that had trouble in production. Like, the people who write articles about movies are so plugged into so much more than the movie itself.
Right.
They're plugged into the process, and so they're the ones getting the word out, and they're the ones who get caught up in things like exceeding production budgets, like blow-ups on set. So with movies like Terminator, the one with Christian Bale where he went crazy, people were already thinking like, oh, this is a shit show because he's pissed off on set. It's going to be bad.
I have a case study that I want you to extrapolate.
Yes.
John Carter.
Yes.
So it grossed $284 million. Its budget was $250 million. It's not a loss, but it's not a great win either.
John Carter's not a bad movie. That's
I never
something.
saw it because I heard it was a bad movie.
The problem facing that
Marketing failure?
Well, the problem facing that movie is it's like one of the first space books that really caught on. So a lot of the movies you've seen have taken a lot from John Carter. So when you end up seeing a movie like John Carter, you're like, I've seen this shit before. But another thing facing it is they probably should have updated it, because that movie is about a Civil War soldier, and it was written about that time.
Which, if I recall, was not in the trailers at all. We saw no Civil War era stuff in any of the trailers, so people were confused when they got there.
Saw
and
the
was like,
guy
what
on
are we
Mars
doing in blue
with
and
all
gray?
the creatures.
It probably is a better movie as a Civil War soldier getting taken to Mars, but it's probably a bigger success if it's a soldier in Afghanistan who's taken to Mars.
Do you think a lot of these movies suffer from way too high expectations? We also have Superman Returns on this, which ended up grossing $391 million. The Lone Ranger grossed $260 million. The Hangover Part 3, horrible movie, $362 million gross. Rise of the Guardians, $306 million gross. And Waterworld, $264 million gross.
So I think I have opinions about all of these. I think The Lone Ranger just was long, and a Western. Westerns don't do as well as they did in the time when people made Westerns. In fact, when you're on the phone pitching a Western around town, people go like, no. And the only reason that this and 3:10 to Yuma got made was because people were like, maybe it's time. And
wasn't time.
they're spaced equally apart. And 3:10 to Yuma was a good movie. Lone Ranger, there's some good parts to it.
I hear it wasn't the greatest movie.
It's just a really...
Maybe we're all like kind of tired of remakes too. I don't know.
Whether we're tired of remakes or not. Another thing is what are you tapping into in the remakes? Like John Carter and the Lone Ranger, like a remake of The Lone Ranger, like people who are in the demographic to buy a lot of movie tickets don't have any personal investment in The Lone Ranger.
It's a little old.
They don't know who it is.
For me, movie tickets hits the nail on the head because I'll hear about a movie before I have an opportunity to see it, before it comes out, and then I'll make a judgment based on that, whether it's worth my $12, $18 to see it in 3D or what have you, and usually it's not.
Right.
Any kind of bad press kind of tips me the other way on the fence.
People love bad press. The Waterworld one, Costner was like, people thought this was a flop before it came out, just because it was so hard to make.
And that was kind of before the proliferation of internet reviews and aggregate reviews.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's tough. I mean, that movie, Waterworld, is a great movie to watch the first 45 minutes of until something better comes on TV. It's a spectacle. It's fantastic. I love the world.
The Waterworld show is still going on at Universal Studios.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
Oh my God, I saw that when I was a kid. And that's the long tail that people keep saying that movies don't have anymore. It used to be like the cycle for a movie to make money was like 2 years. And now it's like the movie comes out, you got 2 weeks. If it doesn't make money. And
so are these all like long cons?
These are it's more the studio's not giving up. Refusing to give up.
And I think the Hangover Part 3 is an example of beating a dead yet profitable horse. Those movies keep making money, people still go to see them, the quality doesn't matter anymore. So
what is our conclusion here? What is happening?
What's happening here is
these all seem to have somewhat similar and yet somewhat different issues.
You know,
like maybe a bad script, maybe bad word of mouth.
Yes.
Maybe a bad first weekend.
Something like Rise of the Guardians for me comes down to like that rabbit looked weird. I didn't want to see that movie.
But Chris Pine was Jack Frost, and
that voice,
he is cute.
Yeah, but he didn't look. It didn't seem enough like Chris Pine. Like that looked like a more of a younger, sprightlier actor doing that voice.
Subverted expectations or disappointment, maybe.
Yeah.
It's a lot of contributing factors.
Do you want to hear a really cool story about the biggest flop in history?
Okay.
The reason that a lot of people say the studio system keeps putting out like sequels, and they keep putting out old ideas, and there's no room for like auteurship. Well, the reason that is because of a movie called Heaven's Gate. There's a movie called Heaven's Gate. Michael Cimino made The Deer Hunter in an era when, like, you know, you gave Coppola and you just said, go make a movie. And you do it, and you used to be able to go and sit down. And then there was this movie, Heaven's Gate, which was the biggest flop in history. It sunk United Artists. They had to sell it to MGM because this guy lost what's now $172 million by inflation on this shitty Western that's 5 hours long. And what had been maybe just the best series of coincidences of people being able to make really good movies and given more and more money, this guy made a flop, and it sunk a studio, and the studio heads were now like, fuck it, that's over. We're never going to lose that much money again. People are now looking at us, and that changed everything. And now you get like one, like on the top 10 list of movies every year, you get maybe one new idea.
And the rest are all sequels or reboots.
Yeah. You know, it's somewhere between 7 and 9 are
I think
old
it's
ideas.
rare that we see an original movie because it's risky to make something that doesn't appeal to everyone, but it's also really bland and not interesting to me, at least. What do you think of these movies that supposedly flopped but actually didn't? Why do we consider them flops? And are our expectations maybe wrong, or what is contributing to this, in your opinion? Please let us know what you think below in the comments, and please be sure to subscribe and check out our Facebook page.